everybody. And we're here to talk about a subject that is very near and dear to my heart. And we have an incredible group of panelists. We are going to be talking about the role about organizational culture and also the incredible link that it has to mental health with some interesting news that has just come out. And then we're going to hear from one of our panelists, Dr. Lundby, who's going to give us a little overview on looking back in terms of sort of how we're doing right now from an organizational culture perspective within the Zoo and Aquarium world. And then we're going to have a panel discussion with our great group of panelists. So before we talk about organizational culture, I'm going to talk about something quickly that is very timely, and that is, and certainly related to organizational culture. And that is that many of you know that Canopy organization has been working for a number of years under David and then also Kathy Wagner, who's really led the effort on women in leadership and gender issues. And in the last couple of years, we've really expanded that to look at people in color, other aspects related to DEAI. And so one of the things that we have been working on for a while is actually getting quantitative data on what the barriers and opportunities are for people within our profession, within the Zoo and Aquarium community. And so starting a little while ago, we began an effort to launch some survey research to really look at this question, and with a whole lot of help from AZA as a partner, a number of incredible funders, including SSA. I'm not going to name all of them because if I do, I'm going to forget one of them, and that would be horrible, and Kathy would be really cranky with me. But with some great supporters, and then also leaders across the AZA and the broader DEAI community that have really helped guide us as we've done this work. So the reason I'm telling you all of this, because you're going, I thought I was joining a webinar on organizational culture. What's she talking about? The reason I'm telling you this is because the survey launched this morning. So this is really, really exciting news. And so Dr. Lundby, who you'll be hearing from in a moment, is the external researcher that we brought on to help us with that. So because it just started this morning, I could not talk about it. It's very exciting. But now I will actually get to talking about why we're here. And I should say, all of you on the call probably are you're all smart enough to know that in fact, talking about DEAI and talking about organizational culture are very closely related, because we know that certainly helps a healthy culture. So many of you may have seen recently that mental health has been in the news a lot. And mental health, certainly we've been hearing over and over again that particularly with the pandemic and such, that mental health has, and all of the things that have happened in the past few years, that mental health has really been in the forefront. And again, you're probably going, okay, great, she's talking about mental health. We know she likes talking about mental health on those feet. And we know that is, certainly a subject that I think we probably need to talk more about, but you're going, I thought we were talking about organizational culture. Well, so it turns out that not surprisingly to all of you, that organizational culture, the culture that you have in the workplace, as well as certainly your culture that you have at home and with your loved ones, that is really key to mental health. And back in November, the U.S. Surgeon General actually came out with a framework related to focusing on workplace mental health. And it includes some really great guidelines for organizations to think about as they are working on really building mental health within the workplace. And probably no surprise to any of you that, oh my gosh, almost all of the framework items have to do with creating a positive workplace culture. So really great, actually really a great resource for all of our leaders to be thinking about this particular framework. And I will be putting this reference in the chat room in just a few minutes. So that's why we're really here today, is to talk about this. What Kyle is going to do is give us a little bit of a background on sort of looking back to where we've been in 2022 and what the state of organizational culture is within our Zoo and Aquarium community. And then what we're going to do is talk about the role of managers, supervisors, leaders, everybody in really working to build a positive workplace culture. I think it is not uncommon for people to think that, oh gosh, it's really the senior leader that controls the, that builds the culture, that individual managers can't make a difference. And while certainly the senior leaders, can arguably make the biggest impact, I think, there are a number of leaders that have figured out that in fact, they also play a significant role here and have figured out ways of really influencing the culture from their place within the organization. And so the folks that we have on our panel today are people that have that background. And so you see before you the folks that you're going to be hearing from. And what we're going to do is first listen to Kyle talk a bit about his research and what he has found. And then I'm going to ask our panel a series of questions to have some dialogue about sort of what their experience is, what their stories are in this area, and what they have learned to be successful. And then we will have hopefully some time for questions. So with that, I am going to turn this over to Kyle.
Hey, stop.
Cool.
And can I ask everybody who isn't speaking to use mute? That would be great.
And can you give me the ability to share my screen?
I am doing that right now. There you go.
All right, cool. Let me find this. I haven't set my 10-minute timer yet, Jackie. I hope that's okay. Okay. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So I'll start my timer. I'm gonna stick to the rules you gave us. All right. Thanks everybody for the opportunity to share some of these results. I just want to start by saying some of this information was shared at the fall conference. Put together a presentation with my partner, Chris Femlinson. So shout out to Chris, who's also works with me on this important work that we do as zoos and aquariums. But we presented some of this showing what employees across AZA were saying about the workplace and did a comparison pre-COVID versus post-COVID, talked about where we've seen some changes. So this is just a small bit of what we presented with a deeper dive into the culture part of that. So let me tell you a little bit about where we get our data. So Global Aspect has been working with the AZA community since 2014, even a little bit earlier than that, going back to around that time, in response to a request from several zoo leaders that I was currently working with. They said, hey, it'd be great to be able to compare our employees, what our employees are saying about engagement and diversity and inclusion and mission, culture, things like that, against what employees are saying in other zoos and aquariums. And so we created a survey and have been administering that to other zoos and aquariums ever since. And have compiled enough data that we now have a representative database where we can go into this, and when we work with clients and run their surveys, we can say this is how you compare to the norms. So all of that data that I'm going to talk about is from that ongoing study of employee opinions from zoo and aquarium employees. Just a quick highlights. There are multiple dimensions in the survey, tapping into some of those topics that are important to employees based on a lot of research, and again based on input from the folks at Shed Aquarium and a few other institutions that helped me create the survey. So we ask questions about these different areas. We also have some comments in the survey. Employees are asked to tell us in their own voice what they like most or least, or what the priority should be for the coming year. But more recently, in a post-COVID times, or as we were going through COVID, we're not out of it. We're not truly post yet. We started asking about culture. From their perspective, how would they describe the culture in their institutions? And we've gathered data from a lot of institutions. You see some of them down in that dark blue box. And I'm just going to give you a real quick high-level overview of what we saw. This shows what employees said to us before COVID, kind of the 3 years before COVID hit, and what they are saying now, or going back about the last year and a half. The vertical bars show how they scored on these different employee engagement. And just quickly going out, the blue bars on the left show you what employees said about their engagement, so their commitment to the organization, their intent to stay, their pride in the organization, willingness to recommend it as a great place to work. So that's a composite of items that we put together, and we call that employee engagement. Any scores that you see here that are above 70% are considered strong. So overall engagement is high pretty much across zoos and aquariums. That hasn't changed dramatically. It went down a little bit later in COVID, but it stayed relatively stable. The nuance, the variation that we see though is I have the different functions. We can slice the data by different functions: guest experience, animal care, and so on. So the blue bar represents pre-COVID, the red bar represents pretty much post-COVID. And what you can see is pretty much everybody went down slightly, but the animal care people went down by a sizable margin. Education research also went down by a sizable margin. And the proportion of quiet quitters, you're hearing about that a lot in the news these days, quiet quitters. The proportion of quiet quitters also increased over that time. So as engagement goes down, quiet quitters increase within these institutions. And again, you can see there's variation across different functions. Not everybody is feeling as positive or as negative. It varies across these institutions. And I'm sure that makes sense to everybody on the call. Of all the survey dimensions, one went down by a relatively larger proportion, and it's this teamwork dimension. Overall, it went down by 3 points, so not a huge dip, but when you look function by function, what people are saying about the teamwork went down by a sizable margin in some of these groups, particularly guest experience, the ones with the red boxes, guest experience, animal care, operations. So how those employees, what they were saying, particularly about communication with in their institutions, really fell off by quite a bit. So we also asked, I mentioned we asked about culture. So in this survey, we ask people we don't provide really clear parameters. We just say, can you describe the culture here? And as I go through and I read through all the comments that we received from people responding to the survey, what really stands out is they're really two camps. People are they either say positive things about their culture, just generally positive, it's friendly, I love it here, it's a great culture, so not really specific. Or they say it's diverse and inclusive, mission driven, we're collaborative. So there's this cluster of people that say really positive things about the cultures. And then there are the group of people that take the other side and they say, well, it's negative, it's toxic, there's a lot of burnout here, it's siloed, it's disconnected. So they're using more negative terms about how they describe their cultures. And we did some additional digging into this, did some analysis, and we split these people into those who say positive things versus those who say negative things. And then when you look at the other survey data, we see that those who describe their cultures in a positive way, they're significantly higher in engagement. So they're more likely to stick around. They express higher pride. They report higher levels of trust and respect. They rate their senior leaders more favorably. Teamwork is rated higher, diversity, inclusion. So they pretty much score higher on everything in the survey. People that use negative terms score lower on all those, and they also score significantly higher or significantly lower on psychological safety, which is an index we have embedded in the survey. So psychological safety is about people feeling comfortable to speak up without being punished. They feel like their input is valued. They see positive communication throughout the organization. So these folks that describe their institutions, the culture in negative light, are significantly lower on psychological safety. That has implications for all of you, because if people say they don't feel psychologically safe, they're much likely to speak up, point out dangerous situations, suggest innovative ways to do their work. They're just generally less likely to speak up. So, and again, I would split this into, looked at or did just a quick cut of the people that responded, talked about their culture in a positive way versus a negative way, split it out by the different functional areas. And what this shows is pretty much everybody within every job function, there are some people that describe their culture as toxic or in a negative way. So it's not unique to any particular function, but you can also see that within animal care in particular, there are more people reporting toxic or negative aspects of culture than positive. So it's flipped compared to everybody. So I wanted to leave you with this final slide to say, culture, as Jackie said, we all think of senior leaders when we talk about culture. So there's definitely something that senior leaders can do, because we see good and bad elements of toxic culture really cutting across these institutions. But within some of the functions, there are also some differences. So you're going to get into that. What can managers do? What can we do locally? So it's a little bit of both. Okay. I don't know if that was 10 minutes, but I think that's my last slide.
Perfect. Thank you, Kyle, very, very much. And so I am now going to share my screen again, just because I want to share the panelists with you again. So now, as I said, what we're going to do is we're going to turn it over to this group of panelists. And so the folks that we're going to hear from represent managers, leaders at all levels within an organization, except for the very senior leader. And that was clearly intentional. So the people in our panel include Nikki Dzialowy, who is with Northwest Truck here in Washington. I'm in Washington State as well, so hence why they're here. Ryan Haynes from the San Diego Safari Park. Trevor Me and Ryan is with the guest engagement safari experience team. And I should have said Nikki is with the facilities team. Trevor Mia is with the education team at St. Augustine Alligator Farm, which, by the way, has the best bird rookery that I've ever seen in a zoological environment. And then Dr. Sam Rivera leads the the animal health team at Zoo Atlanta. And then finally, Jen Rudolph, who is with the education team at the Roger Williams Park Zoo. So we have a great group of people. And so what we're going to do now, I will get rid of that so that we can actually see each other at that. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to ask each of these folks to tell me a 2-minute story. And what I'm going to ask them to do is to thinking about the role that they, as a manager within the organization, thinking about the role that they play. I'd like them to tell us a story about a time when they felt that they really personally influenced the culture of their workplace from their level within the organization. So I am going to start with Nikki. So Nikki, take it away.
Sure. So I'm going to start talking about relationship building and how important it is to me, breaking down those silos and building the connection between other teams. What I did is I spent a full day or at least half day shadowing every single person on my facilities team: horticulture, maintenance, grounds, custodial. If they cleaned gutters, I cleaned gutters. If they cleaned toilets, I cleaned toilets. If they were climbing roofs for HVAC, I was climbing roofs for HVAC. It helped me build a connection with some of the challenges that they face every day. Then I spent time shadowing 1 or 2 keepers of every area for a full day. If they picked up poop, I picked up poop. If they prep diets, I prep diets. And my goal was to break down challenges, not frustrations, but to get past the frustrations. You know, I put in a work order and it's not getting done, or I'm getting the same work order every day and the keepers aren't doing what they're supposed to do. But to get to the challenges, keepers have to do tasks every day. They need to wash down holding stalls and they have a drain that clogs. That's a challenge because they can't do their job. And so I tried to figure out where those challenges were and build a connection between how we could help each other. Can we train keepers how to prevent clogging drains, or is there a bigger problem that we as a facilities team need to dive into? After I did this, I really sat down with each of them and rolled out a process that I thought was going to be more efficient for all of us to work together, where we dedicated a team to a building for a full month. We dealt with high priority work orders in other areas, but those smaller ones that sometimes get put in and never dealt with, we focused on. We worked as a team together, keepers, maintenance, education, all of us figuring out how to make it shut down even when the park's open and accomplish as much as possible. And then we had a big lunch at the end of the month to celebrate how we work together and how we, as a group, maintenance, animal care, education, guest services. We did what we could. We created the right sign. We flexed our schedules to accomplish something. And it really started to build down barriers between all of the teams. Is that 2 minutes?
Wow, that was perfect and an excellent example. Boy, you mentioned a number of great things that you did and really, really impressive. I always love when I hear from leaders going, gosh, I wish I had thought to do that. So nicely done. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ryan for his story.
Yeah, hi everybody. My story is kind of pretty similar about bringing different teams together. I was very new at the safari park. I think I've only been there like 3 months, and my executive director brought me to her office and basically said, I want you to spearhead leading a new education program for the safari park and switch from what we were doing to a more conservation storytelling base. And I was like, oh, that's easy. That will take like 3 months, right? No problem at all. And I learned pretty quickly that it was going to be a huge culture change for our entire institution. It really started with figuring out how to take 4 very separate teams that historically for 50 years worked very different from each other. They had different nomenclature, they had different training, they talked different. And so my goal was, how do you bring these 4 teams to a table and how do you get them to work together? And it was challenging and there was a lot of ups and downs to it, but in reality, just bringing them together and having everybody have a voice at the table really allowed all those 4 teams to express what they thought was important about this change, what they needed for their teams, because they knew their teams, they knew how different they were. And we were able to really come together to create our conservation storytelling program, which I can happily say just hit a year anniversary and is thriving, and we're doing great with it. We're still learning a lot, but it really allowed these 4 teams who now we have almost weekly meetings together. We're always chatting. The safari park feels very like holistic and whole right now. So a really exciting experience.
Wow, great example. Yeah, I love that Lisa asked you to do that after a few months. And if you get that done by Friday, that would be great.
That's how it felt.
I'm sure that's great. So thank you, and really amazing story. So Trevor, your turn.
Hi, everyone. So if you're unfamiliar with what the alligator farm is, we're a very small AZA accredited facility along the coast of Florida. And as Jackie said, we have a pretty awesome rookery. So I started in my position about 5 years ago. And when I started, it was an education department of 1. Now we have a team of 4, including myself. So that's an education registrar, education specialist, and of course, we have our seasonal educators over the summer. And so we've been going through a constant change in our culture, trying to really identify how do we fit both within our facility here, but also our community. And a lot of that's come with empowering our frontline staff. So, when we think about, our staff and how we delineate, different tasks, it's really important to get what their opinions are. And that's kind of what we have, or what I have done, as a manager is, figuring out what are their interests and then empowering them to make those changes basically within our programs. A lot of programs that I wrote probably, didn't really hit the mark. And so I allow them to basically take over that kind of role and, adjust that program to how they think it fits both themselves and their community. I definitely encourage our staff to use their own personal interests and stories within their programs. So it's not just a static, one-off program that you hear every time, which has actually been really cool with our community. Really, when thinking about this, changing culture over time, it's really hard to, pinpoint for myself just one specific instance. But between empowering staff, but also looking at how we work with our ambassadors and how we connect our ambassador animal collection to our community has been a huge part. And one really, really quick story I like to tell is it's probably 4 years ago when we started to make our switch from, your static presentations to naturalistic perching and encounters with animals. So we use different water tables and perching trees to help basically really exemplify all the adaptations that our collection has. And it was at the time one of our maintenance or groundskeeper staff. It was me and him, and we got a chainsaw. We went out into the forest and cut down this really old snag of a cedar tree, which we then turned into, of course, this amazing perch for our ambassadors for our education programs. That has since kind of evolved, and that perch is still here today. But now we see see a lot of our other like frontline staff, you know, making their own naturalistic perching that is used in our theater shows, our offsite programs, and then our on-site field trip programs as well. So, you know, when I think about, you know, how do you change a culture? How do you, you know, really get everyone involved? It's really empowering that frontline staff. And it's not just those frontline managers, but it's everyone from, you know, your specialists or your groundskeepers to, you know, give them those tools they need to succeed and, you know, feel like they have a stake within their facility.
That's excellent. That is a great example. Although I'm a little bit worried about you going out into the woods with a chainsaw, but I'm going to move past that. So well
it's okay.
done.
We're certified.
oh, thank you. Oh, I'm so glad to hear
we're good. We're good.
Well done. Okay, good. Thank you. So now I will turn it over to Sam from the animal health perspective.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. And as you know, as a veterinarian, or as veterinarians, we work with a wide range of departments, you know, well, obviously all animal departments, among others. One of the things we're here because we're very passionate about what we do. There's no question about that. But one of the things that I noticed, you know, we hear the good and the bad, you know, from the keepers, from animal managers. But one of the things that I noticed is how energized we are after, for example, keepers having the opportunity to go and do a little bit of field work or doing something that is related to their work, but they're doing it on their own time. They're finding their own time or the off day to participate on these opportunities. So one of the things that I've been involved and that I've been trying to promote is finding opportunities. How can we find opportunities for keepers on their time working here at the zoo to go and participate on a wide range of projects or attend conferences? So over the years, you know, we have created several funds via donor donations, via budget line items, or via grants writing, where keepers can actually apply and get funds to participate on all these field projects. And it's really amazing. And for those of us that have participated in these projects, we come back so energized and we're ready to go on and then go to the next project. So that's one of the things that I love, that we've been getting more and more involved over the years here at Zoo Atlanta.
That's a great example. And yeah, I think a number of people have really started finding that great success with getting people directly involved with their mission, and that can happen in a number of different ways, just as you said. So I think that's really terrific. Thank you, Sam. And then finally, Jen.
Thanks. So I actually wanted to tell a story. This was before I became a manager. And my life before the zoo, I worked in corporate America, and actually like retail corporate America, and it was not fun. So this has been like saved my life. But anyway, it's another story. So when I started as an education program instructor, I was out in schools every day. And what I loved to do was give anybody that was part of our programs really tangible things they could be doing. And a lot of times that was tying, conservation into just sustainability practices, right? So whether that's looking at, energy use or, recycling and composting. And I was super passionate about it. So one day coming home from one of my programs, it was a Saturday, and it happened to be the day of our biggest one-day fundraiser. So it's called Zubilee. I'm sure a lot of you have those events at your zoo, and all of our local restaurants would come and they would, give out delicious food. Tickets were about $150. I happened to have my recycling with me from the program I was at. I was at a school that didn't recycle. When I got back to the zoo, I was walking around looking for a can to, put my recycling in, and there weren't any. So I asked our facilities team, where are all the cans? And they said that, well, they pulled them for Zubilee because it's just too much to manage. So what essentially had been happening for years, probably about, 15 years at this point, was, for $150 a ticket, you came to this really swanky event in the name of conservation and education, and every single thing went into the landfill. And we have a huge problem with landfill in Rhode Island anyway, because we're a teeny tiny state. So I was super upset. I felt like a hypocrite, and I really had to tend to my emotional state because I was like, well, how are we doing this? How are we contributing and, this making a negative impact? So it took a while. Over the course of years, I was able to assemble a team that was just focused on greening our events. And we now have actual completely, trash-free events at the zoo, where they used to be, that event used to create about 3 tons of waste just in that one night that went into the landfill. Now there's 0 trash, but what's even more exciting is that we're developing a horticultural compound on our zoo grounds that will actually also compost just our day-to-day waste.
Wow, great example. And what a perfect example of how one person can make a difference. But I also noticed it wasn't one person that made a difference. You were smart enough to gather a group of people, and all of you have talked about working directly with folks. So great examples. And you also, a number of you provided some specifics. I'm going to make you dig a little deeper. Before I do that, though, I do want to comment that you all are welcome to use the chat. I did paste in there the link to the Surgeon General framework related to mental health, which, as I mentioned, does really draw on culture issues. And so, but now what I want to do, oh, and also you can use the chat to post questions, to share things with each other, because I know you all have great examples that we all can be learning from. So feel free to use the chat. And so now what I'm going to ask you guys to do is to dig even a little bit deeper. I think one of the things that I know as a manager starting out, well, frankly, still, because we all keep learning about leadership, right? And by the way, Trevor, I loved how you showed how humble you were by saying, yeah, program's probably not so great, and you guys can probably do better. I love that. I love that use of humility. So we all can learn. And often I think people go, okay, so that sounds really great, but I don't know exactly how to do that. I don't know what the specific things are that people can do. What are the specific messages I can use? What are the very specific behaviors I can show that will really help build a positive culture? And so I know that Jen and Ryan both have particular examples that they wanted to provide. So I'm going to start with Ryan and ask you to share a little bit specifically about some of the specific behaviors where that you showed and messages that you shared, specific things that you did to really influence the culture in a positive way.
Yeah, so like I talked about with my story, it was bringing a lot of different teams together. And so one of the biggest behaviors that we did at the beginning was just buy-in, getting everybody really passionate about the program, but getting them involved from the start, because I could have easily made all this content and these classes in my own little silo and just be like, okay, this is it. This is what we're doing. Like, thanks for participating, basically. But allowing the team to actually sit in and be part of the development from the beginning made them really passionate about the program. They felt like it was theirs, they had ownership. And I think a really important lesson for me was I basically presented a draft of one of the content trainings that we'd be teaching to the entire safari park to this small team of leaders of different departments. And they kind of gutted it, but in the best way possible, because I'm out of practice when it comes to education. I haven't done an education program myself in 5 years. And I had a person in that meeting who does programs almost every single day. And she was like, that doesn't work. That does work. Our team needs this. And it was kind of a humbling experience for me. But then that person became so passionate about the program that she actually is driving a huge part of the training now. And she teaches almost every single class. And so allowing that person to be part of it from the very beginning, have a voice, make decisions. And now I can take a step back and watch this person thrive in teaching these classes and this content. And that's just one example. I have many examples of people who we did the same thing with, and I'm just really proud to watch them kind of grow and thrive and build this culture of storytelling at the safari park.
Love that. And one specific thing that I heard you talk about is this, it's really sort of the notion of co-design, right? It's where you actually bring people in to be part of developing, and you're okay if it goes a different direction than what you had planned. And that I think is the hardest, especially for people that are old like me. You know, we were not raised in an environment where you did this. You know, you as the leader, you were supposed to know what you were doing and move forward. And now this notion that you would bring people in and they might take it a completely different direction than you were going is it's really, I think, hard for older people to learn. But I think for folks that are younger than me, it's much easier. So well done. I'm also guessing that along the way, because you said some great things about how proud you were, and I'm guessing along the way you probably shared those thoughts with folks regularly. Is that a good guess?
Yes.
Yeah, very important.
It's like a regular joke. They're putting me out of a job. I'm like, oh, you guys got it.
Excellent. I love that. Jen, your turn.
Sure. So I think for me, the first thing I did, I had to recognize just my emotional state. It's very easy to get caught in outrage, I think, especially when we all care so deeply about what we're doing and just get really critical of things. So what I had to do was, look at that and then be really mindful of where was my energy going? Is it just feeding outrage or is it looking at solutions? And then the second thing was really separating the systems from the people who were operating within them. And in doing that, I had to really just keep remembering that, folks that created these systems didn't do it with malicious intent. It was just like, oh, well, we have to do it easy because we're all really busy. And so I really had to just, understand that the systems were broken, they needed to be fixed, but they were created with good intent. And then third, really just organizing, finding my people and not giving up. I think I've heard that from a lot of people too. Once you find the people that feed your flames, right? And then you can turn that outrage into something really constructive. And I think that's amazing. And for me, it was, working with folks from operations, from animal care, from just on sustainability. This wasn't in anyone's job title. Sometimes it was, after work, over coffee or some cocktails, if I'm being honest. And sometimes it was just, okay, we have 15 minutes. What can we do? Do your quick task list. But it was a process that took years to really perfect, but it was definitely worth it. And we had a lot of fun in the meantime.
That's really great. And so a couple of key things in there that you said. One, I loved how you talked about the work that you did about and with yourself in terms of really getting yourself ready to do this work. And, one of the things that Kylie knows really well from studying engagement is that, sometimes when you look at the engagement of folks, there's a group of folks that are in that frustrated category, but they're also really easy to kind of get back because they are in the right place. They're just frustrated and they want to be unfrustrated. And so you talked about all the ways that you worked with yourself to get yourself to the place where, okay, I'm going to use this energy for good. And you've got yourself there. And I'm betting you're really good now at getting other people there. And that's really a great skill. That's really impressive. So the other piece that I loved that you talked about is that it took years. And I think it is so easy to feel like if something takes a long time that you're failing. And, I think in general, I think about some of the behavior change work that we're doing within zoos and aquariums in general, whether it's related to organizational culture or related to engagement, is one of those examples where we started this conversation a long time ago. And some people felt like we failed because it didn't happen in 2 years. It's like, yeah, it's taken a long time, but you make progress and you have to be happy with that as it goes. So really, really well done. So now I'm going to turn a little bit to the dark side. And which is a little bit in the frustration category, but not necessarily just in the frustration category. And we, Kyle talked a good bit about this notion of having a toxic culture. And certainly I think that we've heard that phrase a lot. It's sort of out in the ethos now, right? People talk about toxicity in their culture. And certainly we've all been in that place where we've worked within a group that just feels toxic. And at the end of spending time with them, you kind of go, oh my God, I started out feeling really great. Now I feel horrible. And so as managers, and so one thing that I've seen along the way is some managers just go, I have a toxic group, there's nothing I can do. I'm guessing all of you have figured out ways of coping with that and really working to turn a group around, to turn individuals around. And I would love to hear from some of you. So I'm going to just see who amongst this esteemed panel would like to address this question. And I'm going to look to somebody other than Jen and Ryan because I just made you guys talk more.
I can do it, Jackie.
Thank you very much, Trevor.
Of course. So actually the story that I have is not at my current facility. It's at a facility I worked before this. So I'll just leave the name out. But when I first started, I was a frontline educator, and I feel like I walked into a very toxic culture already. In terms of how the structure and the departments were set up, there was pretty much no communication between education and research and animal care and our frontline services. It was very cliquey in that manner. And then even when you look further into those individual departments, it got even clickier. And so coming in, I tend to usually make friends pretty easily. And so I, made a friend in animal care, made a friend in research, and we started having lunch together. And luckily for us, we had a pretty awesome deli that was actually, not even a 5-minute walk from our facility. And so we started eating there pretty consistently, pretty much every day. And, as we were talking at lunch, we kind of realized that a lot of these divisions were just simply because there was no communication across departments. Things weren't being communicated properly. People were just being left out of conversations. And so what we did was we started inviting everyone from all of these departments to lunch. We all work in animal care, so we obviously have a lot of restrictions on, when can someone take lunch and when can't. And so what we decided to do was kind of space out our lunches. So there would always be someone there from 11 to 3. And then we were able to kind of throughout this, this obviously took a few months to actually get into place, but we would go out and individually invite people to just eat lunch with us. And then it started off with 3 of us, and by the end of it, there was about 20 people that would actually enjoy this kind of lunch conversation. And very rarely did we ever talk about work, but it really just opened up those lines of communication. So when people are sharing those office spaces or those areas with each other, they felt a little bit more comfortable, I think personally, kind of reaching out saying, hey, I need assistance from the research team on this project, or, it'd be really great if education could help us step up and help animal care with this project. I'm no longer there. I haven't been there in 6 years, so I hope some of that has still continued. But when I think about toxicity in our workplaces, I feel like a lot of it definitely comes from just a misunderstanding of who can we communicate to, how can we get across our point. And what's better than sometimes sharing those ideas or thoughts, like Jen said, over food or even cocktails, who knows. But definitely opening up those lines makes for a better work environment from what I've seen.
Love that. And, I think part of what you're talking about is just getting to know people as people, right? And so no surprise that people use that when they're dealing with peace processes amongst countries. So Kylie, you have your hand raised.
I do. I think that was just an interesting example, Trevor. And since I have dug through a lot of this data, in the comments, what I heard a lot of going through COVID and then later as institutions were reopening is that a lot of people were just saying, I miss my colleagues. I just want to get together. I want, a hot dog social, pizza party, things like that. People just wanted to reconnect because they hadn't been around others. So Trevor, what you're describing, I think makes sense. Definitely is that you're making time to reach out to people and to connect with people. And that is really critical at any time. But I would say for all of you, thinking about what we've all been through and we're still going through right now, people are just looking for a connection. So if it's always important, and perhaps even more important right now, to do things like that. So that's cool.
I love that. Thank you. And Nikki, I think you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I was going to answer the question, but I don't know how we're doing on time.
Go for it. You're fine.
Okay. So one of the things as important as relationship building to me is our actions should reflect our expectations. And I think managers have a role where we kind of bridge the gap between senior leadership and frontline staff. One of the big things that I've done in situations that could be considered toxic is when senior leaders or the expectations of an organization are, you don't have to work outside of work, it's just your 8-hour day, you do what you can. And then you get that email at 9 p.m. or on your weekend. A lot of us work weekend days, so I'm off on Mondays. So I would come into work on Tuesday morning to 200 emails from Monday. And what I did was I tried to protect my team. So while leadership was saying, hey, we don't expect you to work on your weekends, and then I get an email on Sunday night, I need an answer tomorrow at 8 a.m. I would reply and say, hey, I'm really sorry, I'm not going to reach out to my team on their weekend. I will get back to you as soon as I can. So I tried to build a wall around them until my team could build the strength to not feel obligated to respond on their weekends, because they knew that wasn't my expectation. And then I worked with my leader to say, hey, I'm responding, but you'll get an answer later. That's as far as I'm going from my phone, right? So that was one thing I think I did that really shifted the expectations from people, where actions and words were a little bit different.
So I heard you say 3 really clear things. One is you set boundaries, which I'm the first to say is really hard. The second thing that you did was you were really, you recognized your role as a role model. And that if you didn't demonstrate this behavior, you were going to clearly show to your team that it wasn't important, but you did show that it was important. And then you worked also with your leaders to help them understand. And boy, those are really, really critical things. So we are now in the section here where I am interested in hearing from our group. And we do have some questions here. I think that, so the first question that Misha has, and I'm going to try to summarize this, is basically, so these are, all what we're really talking about is good leadership. Correct. Absolutely. And so why does that seem to, is it more important now than it used to be? And so I'm curious what people think about that. I bet somebody has an opinion about this. I know I do, but I'm going to look to you. I thought you would, Ryan. Go for it.
Yeah, I can take it. So my staff has greatly changed over COVID. My education staff historically was people who have been in this industry 20 plus years and have been in the same roles. And since COVID, I'm now hiring like new college kids who this is their first time job. So definitely the role of a leader has changed a lot, because my role now is how do you help this very young staff become professionals in our fields. So it's a lot of career development opportunities. It's a lot of like how to write a resume, how to do a job interview, how to apply to jobs. Before it was a lot of, how do you develop staff who have been in their career for a very long time? And now it's how do you start someone's career, which is a big shift for our facility in itself. So definitely the role of a leader has changed so much, I feel like recently, just with our employee base.
I think that's true. I also think that it used to be true back in the day when I was starting out, you weren't allowed to be a kind leader. It was not respected. I was told that, people, unless people feared me, I was not succeeding as a leader, which I decided was hogwash, and that I wasn't going to do that. And it's worked out okay. So we have another question, which is, so with animal care professionals not feeling great about their cultures, what is being done and what can people outside of animal care areas, animal care departments do to help change that? Kyle, I bet you've had some thoughts about that.
Yeah, so I would say some of the things that bug animal care people are, you'll see them in other parts of these institutions, but a lot of what it seems to come down to is feeling that they are heard and respected and valued, and that they don't feel that. And sometimes it's that the leadership, that they feel like they're out of the loop, that decisions are being made and not communicating to them. Sometimes it's that they feel, as the animal people are intensely passionate about what they do and about their animals. And all they want to do is protect and take care of the animals. So sometimes what they don't necessarily see how some of the decisions the institution is making connect to what they want to do. So for example, when there are beer events or, holiday things like that, a lot of the animals people, when I read their comments, they'll say, why are we spending our time and our money on that when we should be focusing on the animals? I need this, I need that. So I think that, they want to be heard, they want to be respected, they have great ideas and they want to contribute. And I think institutions maybe could do a better job of communicating, connecting with that group in particular, because they tend to be a little more vociferous than others in these institutions. But really, that's true of everybody that works in these institutions. That the panelists, when they're describing what's really good about how they promote a positive culture, it was a lot about demonstrating that you value by sitting around a table with people or climbing up on the roof and working with people, picking up poop with the other people. All those things really matter. So I said way too much, but those are some of the things that I would add, Jackie.
That's great, thank you. And no, you did not say too much. So Sam, you had your hand up.
Hello. Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment. Again, talking from the perspective of a veterinarian and the veterinary team. And I having been here in Atlanta for 17 years, adjusting to the new, the new faces, the new culture, the teams, it's so important for us as leaders to be able to change and adjust. Yeah. And as a team that works with so many other departments, the influence that we can have on other departments, with the energy that we bring. And one of the things that I felt was important to me, talking specifically about our team, is how do we, every day we start our energy, the energy that we bring to our team, not only to our team, but to the rest of the zoo when we go on our daily rounds. What can we do to improve that? And there was something very small that was suggested by one of our veterinarians that we've been doing for the past 2 years, is we meet every morning. We have our rounds with who's gonna do what. And one thing that we do is we have a dry erase board, our gratitude board. What are we grateful for this day? You cannot say family, you cannot say health. The other day we were grateful because the chinchilla pooped. Yeah, we're very excited about that. So, and that helped us get to know each other and getting the right energy before we start our day.
Love that. Nikki.
One thing that I try to do that I think has really connected animal care with facilities as well as education and other departments is I try to send a weekly email. I'd like to be weekly, but it's more like every other Saturday on my Friday about what's coming up ahead in the next week, in the next 2 weeks, and the next month if I know it. Because a lot of the times we think something won't impact someone, a tough story, I'll make it quick. I brought a crane in when I was at Denver Zoo. It was behind a 3-story building. I didn't think anybody would see it. I sent a quick email to the normal scared animals, right? I know my zebras are gonna freak out. I know my giraffes are gonna freak out. Everybody was like, it's fine, don't worry about it. And then a vulture saw it, panicked. And it didn't end the way I wanted it to. The bird came out okay, but it was still pretty traumatic. What I learned from that is I sent an email, hey, I'm bringing a crane in next week. And maybe Trevor over in education is gonna be like, hey, I got a Boy Scout group coming out. Like, it's not gonna work out, but our worlds don't normally overlap. And so just by saying what I'm doing, whether it's filter changes, you might experience an interruption in your heat, to an asphalt project, to a crane, it gives every department an opportunity to say, why? Or that's a really cool crane, tell me more. Or I'm worried about this vet procedure I have coming up and you're gonna scare the giraffe before I can, do what I need to do. So simply by just sending a weekly email, I make it funny, I make it cute, I put little things in there. I tell them who to contact for whatever it is. And it gives everybody an opportunity to ask questions. And then they feel, like Kyle said, like they're involved, their opinions matter because they get to ask questions, they get to follow up. And if they're just nosy, they get to ask questions and it's okay. And I don't mind, and it works out.
What I love about that is, we're all familiar with the idea of doing a weekly report on sort of what happened in the past. You're kind of doing one about what's happening right now and what's happening going forward. And I don't think we do that very often. And so at least I didn't do that, I'll just say. So I think that's a really, really great idea. So we're almost out of time. There are two things that I want to mention quickly, and then and there have been some great ideas in the chat. And so by the way, we will put together the key learnings out of this and the transcript and send that out and have that on the website so you all can get access to it. I am going to ask Jeff Bannock if he is still actually really here. I see his photo, but I'm hoping he's really here to talk a little bit about the work that the HR committee is doing related to helping connect people to the conservation aspect of their mission. Because one of the things I think people have found is that, well, I know people have found is that if people feel connected to their mission, then they're much more likely to be engaged and feel like they have a positive culture. But really quickly, two things I've learned. One is I have heard people say over and over and over again, communication, no question. I've also heard in other conversations, the idea that people talk about, well, we don't communicate, our communication system is broken, we have to fix it. So the key here, and you all know this, is that communication is not a problem to be solved. It is a dilemma to be managed. We just have to work on it. Nobody is going to fix communication. The way that you get better at communication is you just do it over and over again, continually striving to get better at it, but know that you will never succeed and don't have that expectation. And your team shouldn't have that expectation. We just all need to keep getting better and better at it. And we've heard great examples. The other piece that I heard you guys talk about, but not say explicitly, is that when you're dealing with toxic cultures, well, many of you talked about being role models, but you all are, I'm sure, role models for a key part of having a positive culture, which is not gossiping and not being negative. And it is really hard to do. It is so easy to get sucked into being snarky. People that know me know that I can be snarky, but boy, do I feel better when I am not snarky. I feel better when I don't participate in those conversations. I feel better when, as a leader, I'm clear that I'm not participating in that conversation and that I say nice things about people. My mother always said, and she was right, that if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. So those are my two thoughts there. But Jeff, I want to turn it over to you and see if you can just say a few words about what the HR committee is doing. And then I know we're out of time and I'm really sorry.
Sure. So the HR committee was tasked with creating a pilot over this last year where we got together basically any institution, ACA institution that was interested in meeting monthly. And we've done that. And so we're now at the end of the year at this point. But what I'd be happy to do is if you email me, and I probably won't have time to put my contact information in the chat here, I'd be happy to connect you to that group. And then as we evolve this into the future, where that looks like, it's been basically a place to come and meet virtually, since we're all over the country and even in Canada. I don't think we have anybody else, other countries, but at this point, where we've just been talking about some of these issues. And I'd like to make a point that is really, really important, I think, in all of this, is that what Jackie was making, and what all of you have been making, every one of the panelists said it basically. Culture is about relationship. Culture is a relationship. You got a good relationship with your people, you've got a good culture. You don't have a good relationship with the people, you don't have a good culture. It really comes to that one-on-one, those informal meetings, those old things. And in spite of whatever mission you have as an organization, and whatever that mission is focused on, is going to go nowhere if the relationships of the people who are involved in that organization aren't good. So that would be my 2 cents on that. But we are very interested in terms of, from an organizational standpoint, from an industry standpoint, on how we can help each other, make these cultures work for us so that they're actually effective, and not just effective, but so that we're getting those things we need as humans. And it's fun too, right? It's just fun. A good relationship is fantastic. It provides so many things that we all need, all of us need in it. So.
We all need a sense of belonging, and that is all about relationships. So absolutely. So Jeff, you could not have concluded this better. Thank you. So people have been posing other questions in here, and I will go ahead and make sure that when we put the notes together that it includes Jeff's email address, and also that we address some of the specific questions that people have. So with that, I'm going to thank our panelists. You guys were amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I knew that you would be great, and I was right. And also want to continue to thank David and all the folks from Canopy for really supporting these webinars. I think they're really important. I'm really grateful. So I think that's it. And hope you all have a great day. And Kyle, thank you again. And thank you so much for doing the survey. I'm so excited it's launched.
We have about 20 more responses picked up in the last hour.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Thank you all very, very much. Thanks for being here.